Greetings petrolheads, welcome back to Automation, the car company tycoon game. And yesterday we saw the Vincent by Huer versus the Alpine Crossfire, and it was a pretty people in the comments pretty much agreed that the Alpine Crossfire fit this challenge better than the Vincent. But today we're gonna have another head-to-head. It's gonna be the Rondini 346 made by Joao Pedro Villa versus the Lurker BGTC sent in by David 5002. And let's get started with the Rondini 346. Automation. Okay, we got it. So first impression, nice detail on the grille there that makes it look sort of like an Alpha. I like it. And also with the headlights, like this really does fit the 80s Alphas look. I think this definitely is one of those entries that looks like an 80s car, at least on the front. I mean, on the rear, sure. That really like your normal cars, 1987 styling, but this isn't supposed to be a normal car, right? It's a budget GT. Like a GT is something a little more exclusive, even if it is, in this case, you know, a somewhat affordable thing, but nonetheless, I think the styling is definitely era correct. I like it. Now let's look at the mechanical components of it. We got a corrosion resistant steel. Damn, I can't speak today. Monocoque with aluminium panels. We got a 5-speed manual gearbox. I think we've seen only manual gearboxes so far. Then double wishbones all around, 248 horsepower from a 3.35 liter turbocharged straight six. Now that engine is going to be interesting. It's also got 24 valves, so it's a pretty big engine. Like we're going to see lots of torque from this thing. It's a dual overhead cam, 4 valve per cylinder, no, actually not full aluminum. Block is cast iron, head is aluminum. Straight six engine. Cast crank, cast conrods. Not causing any problems with the with all that torque. That's interesting. And hyper-eutectic cast pistons that they make for better emissions. We have a compression ratio of 8.3 to 1, which is fairly low, but then again, this is the 80s, and with turbos you have to go extremely low on the compression ratio in the 80s. And with an air-to-air intercooler, like you used to get in the 80s, like water-to-air cooling did exist, but it wasn't really that common yet. Today, almost all turbo engines have a water-to-air cooler. Multi-point injection, standard configuration, standard intake, running on premium gas, 6,000 RPM rev limit. Because it doesn't need anymore, it makes enough power as is. 2 reverse flow mufflers, so this thing is going to be really quiet. Or at least it would be, but in the game, of course, when you're running on the test track, most engines are about equally loud. Except if you except if you remove the mufflers altogether. 5-speed manual, we've seen that. Geared limited slip diff. Medium compound road tires. 225s front, 235s rear. This is one of the rare cars that doesn't have the same width front and rear in this challenge. This does make for better drivability than if you went for 235s all around though. but you know, in practice, it's kind of useful to have the same size wheel on both ends, so that you know, after one season, and you put them away for the winter tires, and then you put the summer tires back on next year. You can look at which ones are better, are still in better shape, probably the ones you had on the front end, I had to guess, and you can put those on the rear and the ones from the rear up to the front, and it'll be totally fine. Whereas you can't do that with this, otherwise that'll upset the car's handling. Then again, this isn't one of the judging criteria, this is just me rambling at this point. Three piston vented discs brakes up front, one piston on the rear, a very comfortable pad type on the rear, and much larger size brakes up front than on the rear. Now I know this is a sort of balancing thing with automation, that you know, you get lots of drivability out of making the rear brakes a lot smaller than the front ones, on front engine cars anyway. And I don't hold that against you. Rather, I think that in the real world, if a car has like 310mm brakes up front, then it's gonna have like 275, 280, maybe 285, something like that, on the rear, because, well, they wanna, you know, you have those 16-inch rims or whatever size rims the real world car would have, and you don't wanna, you don't want there just to be nothing behind the rims, seemingly, when you look at the car from the side. That, like, the cosmetic thing is something that definitely is true in the real world, and doesn't really matter in this game. Like, look at that. Look at how much of a gap there is between the brakes and the rims here compared to here. And that is what I'm talking about. This sort of thing is something that manufacturers in the real world try to avoid, because, you know, big rims with big brakes behind them look imposing, look impressive, look like the car is expensive and fast, so it needs those brakes, you know. That doesn't really matter in the game, of course. So, with a semi-clad under tray, we have luxury interior and entertainment with 4 seats, we have power steering and ABS, we have advanced safety, and we have progressive springs with gas monotube dampers and passive sway bars, and a reasonably comfortable setup here. Not very low, this thing. You could lower it a little bit. I was just checking if when you lowered it by 1 point it would bottom out, but it doesn't. So 44.2 drivability, 31.6 sportiness, 49 comfort. That's really good. And then 42.5 prestige, 44.2 safety, and really low fuel consumption. I think this is the lowest fuel consumption we've seen so far. How does this car do on, like, in terms of straight line performance? So it's a 14.18 quarter mile and a 5.60 to 100. So this one's up there with the fastest cars. Yeah, very nice, very good engine. It's also fairly light at 1255. How about price? 32,400. So there's still a little bit of room between this price and the price limit of 35 grand. 68.4 score in the GT segment is also pretty good. One of the better ones I think we've seen so far. And running costs, let's check those as well. 28, 30, so that's really, really good. That is some really, really good running costs. Like think those are the lowest we've seen so far. If it's not the lowest, it's the second lowest, I can remember, but definitely really affordable to run this thing, and it's fast too. However, it does not disappoint in terms of comfort and prestige and whatnot, so this is definitely one of the stronger entries I think so far. But we have another car to compare this to today, and that will be the Lurker BGTC. Which I don't know what's up with automation recently. Like it's taken quite a while to do a bunch of things, including loading up cars for me in the past couple of days. But whatever. So this thing looks a little different. It doesn't look out of place for the 80s, that's for sure. Yeah, kind of an interesting approach of taking, like, especially on the rear end, vaguely DeLorean-esque taillights, in that there's like so many little pieces. Well, so many. That's 6 in this case, whereas it's like 8,000 on the DeLorean's taillights. Yeah. So this is the second time I think we've seen this body. This has a little bit of practicality rather than zero, because apparently the rear end is not completely shortened. Let's see. Steel and corrosion resistant steel monocoque partial aluminum panels, 5-speed manual, there are wishbones all around. 250 horsepower from an 8100 RPM 2.7 liter V8. That's an interesting engine. Let's check it out. Oh, look at that. 250 horsepower, only 188 pound-feet of torque. That might be the lowest torque we've seen so far. I could be wrong though. Full aluminium, dual overhead cams with 4 valves per cylinder. Forged steel crank, I-beam steel conrods, forged pistons. It doesn't need those components though because of the high revs. We have a little bit of valve float. It's getting orange, so as long as you don't, redline it at all times, it should be okay. But if you went a little bit higher with the RPM limit still, which wouldn't really gain you anything anyway, but if it did, then it would cause some problems, I'm pretty sure. 74 cam profile, yeah, very aggressive. We see that from the power and torque curves. 10 compression ratio, I think that's the highest we've seen so far. It's naturally aspirated, of course. We have a throttle per cylinder configuration with a performance intake, because there's basically no way you would achieve this kind of power from a 2.7 liter V8 in 1988, because of course race intake and race exhaust headers are banned. Very lean fuel mixture and 73 ignition timing. A single exhaust pipe rather than 2. It's kind of interesting. And 2.75 inches of exhaust diameter. 2 reverse flow mufflers to keep the noise a little bit low, because otherwise this thing would be screaming. That is an interesting engine, definitely. Like, if reliability was a factor, there would be... It might get a little bit of a penalty there, because it does have some non-negligible amounts of valve float, but that's only really relevant in the very high RPMs, which you don't really use very often in everyday driving anyway. So, single clutch, 5-speed manual gearbox, really high top speed. Viscous, I almost said vicious, viscous limited slip diff. Sports tires with 235s all around, 16-inch alloy rims. With +4 quality into the tires as well, and we have a little bit of quality into the gearbox as well, +4. 260mm 3-piston vented discs up front with 80 on the pad type, so very aggressive front brakes, and slightly more aggressive rear brakes as well, which are 230mm and 1-piston vented discs. Really small brakes, but there is no brake fade because this car is light. I was assuming maybe we also have some brake airflow, but we don't. Just enough cooling. Fully clad under tray. And no aero fixtures, right? Yeah, no lips, no wings, no nothing. +9 quality in aerodynamics. Now that helps with both economy and with the top speed, of course, which is 280 kilometers an hour. Holy shit. Luxury everything. 4 seats, advanced safety, power steering and ABS, and progressive springs for better drivability, gas monotube dampers. Man, if this thing isn't too expensive on the market, like actually over budget, then I don't really know what to say against it. How does this thing only cost $28,950? Well, this is a strong entry. Let's check the running costs. Oh well, yeah, those are higher than on the I forgot what it's called, the Rondini 346. But the Rondini had the lowest running costs we've seen so far, and these ones are still low in comparison to a lot of other cars we've seen. $13.91 quarter mile, 5.30 to 100, 280 kilometers an hour top speed. Now the only thing I can say against this car is, for one, the comfort is a little bit lower than on most other cars we've seen so far with 40.2, and the prestige of 41.6 is not amazing either. And the other thing I was going to say is that this car is smaller, like than most other cars we've seen so far. So like, if you think of a budget GT car, you would think of something that's a little bit bigger, a little bit with a little bit bigger footprint. But that is really the only thing I could possibly say against this car, except for the comfort. This is more of a pocket rocket with a nice interior. Let me know what you think. So, this one or the Rondini 346? For once, I think I don't really have a clear favorite in this matchup. So, I guess it's gonna come down to who you guys are voting for. Let me know what you think, and I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you again with another one tomorrow. Goodbye.